So welcome to the meeting of the Board of Selectmen. It's Monday, August 1st. Already it's August 2022. Dan, are we all set?
Oh, no.
All right. So if everybody would please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This morning, we have myself, First Selectwoman Tara Carr, Selectman Harry Shaker, and Selectman Steve Dunn present for the meeting, as well as our town council, our director of finance. Tonight, we will start by having presentations, and Mr. Annis, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, I'm sorry. Up and down. I skipped over public comment, so we'll go to that. Thank you, Ginny.
It looks like Joan Paulson.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joan Polson from 16 Twilight Lane. I haven't been here for a long time, but I'm glad to be back. I think a few of us tonight are interested in addressing the issue of the new cell tower that's proposed for Vale Road. And I haven't really prepared a talk. I'm just going to tell you a few things I know and a few things I think. I know that this equipment is part of the 5G network, and it's going to be capable of being raised up to microwave levels of radiation. I know that those levels of radiation and also 4G levels of radiation are physically harmful to people. I particularly worry about the children. I don't have children living here in Brookfield, but children are very vulnerable and affected. I know that because my daughter died from glioblastoma brain cancer. She died about 10 years ago. And I know that a huge study was done by an institution called the National Toxicology Program. It's online. You can look at it. You can read what happened, what they found. And among the several types of cancers that were caused by cell phone radiation, not 5G, just cell phone radiation, two particular ones were prominent. One was heart cancers called schwannomas, and the other one was brain cancers called gliomas. And the reason those two probably were happening, I mean, from my understanding of the biology, is that both of the membranes of both those organs have a lot of iron. We have iron in our body, a lot of iron in them. And the radiation, you know, we're all really involved with radiation. We all need sunshine. Our hearts are beating at a certain pace. We're very complicated biologically. It's very interesting. And messing around with this kind of radiation in our atmosphere affects us biologically. There were some objections that I wasn't presenting experiments done on people, which we just don't really do that. It's kind of like unethical. But I did find one experiment that was done on human sperm with 5G level of radiation, and it does something bad. It's not good. And and also, I was told that we have to have 5G because somebody could be out hiking and they were not going to have receptivity. Well, it's very interesting, but that kind of, those kind of electromagnetic fields do not travel well through trees. There are going to be blind spots. And if somebody passes out or has a heart attack in a store and they can't get somebody on their cell phone, somebody else in the store will get somebody to come. It just doesn't make any sense to me to worry
Mrs.
about
Polson.
that kind of thing. And that's probably all I have time for. So I object to having that tower put in our town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next one, Gwen Arment. Gwen?
Hi, Gwen Arment, 62 Indian Trail. This is going to be short. It's in relation to the same subject that Joan was talking about. I don't know if you all have this article in front of you. Ginny, did you?
Yes.
Yes,
I have.
okay. It's an article about 5G cell towers. The 5G cell tower installation has been halted by court order in Mahopac, New York. That's Carmel. And a moratorium has been placed in Easton, Connecticut, due to health issues. Wireless radiation, especially 5G, has been proven harmful to the human body. I am proposing a moratorium on any new cell towers being installed in Brookfield until all health-related facts are known. And you can read, and I will leave this with you as well, you can read about the court-ordered cell tower ban in Mahopac. And if you copy the link to the full article, there are several videos supporting the harm of cell phone towers. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's it. Next speaker, Andy Payne.
Andy Kame, 5 Fernbrook Drive. I'd like to add my voice to the consideration regarding the 5G cell tower. As you know, there's been a lot of talk about home rule, local control, state mandates, state siting council. We've had a fight many years ago when they wanted to put a massive tower up on Tower Road, telling it was only a small tower, yet it was a massive tower like you see on 84, not far from the police station. I think we need to take a look at this, or take a strategic pause here and see where we need to place this. There may be a situation where we can't control placement, but there may be a better place to put it. It just makes sense to me that we take a little bit of a look at this and see what we're really getting into before we getting into. All of these developers and of these type of things will tell you they need it. As you'll recall, a few years ago, we were told that if we put a cell tower behind the fire department, that's it, we're good, we're golden. Yet, here we are again, the need for another cell tower. And it's not just the 5G cell tower. There's also repeaters, other nodes of these things. So it's not just the tower. These things get repeated again and again. So I think we need to take a look at that. That's one point. The second point is regarding the armed security in the school. If you're not going to have armed security in the school, don't waste the money. Spend it on doors or better alarms or something like that. Just having another couple people walking around with hands in their pockets is really not going to do anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Joyce Bucina.
Okay, Joyce Bocino, 7 Broadview Road, and I'll be speaking on the school security as well. So as a parent of a high school student, I am upset to hear that the Board of Ed is asking to add unarmed guards during the day during school, and an armed guard only after school. It seems hypocritical to me that our town would properly protect the building after hours, but not add that effective layer of protection while my child attends school during the day. This debate came up in the wake of an active shooter situation. I do not feel the resolution that they are asking you to fund provides our children with adequate protection against a threat of that level of an active shooter. I do not know what the right answer is and can't imagine the difficult decision that you have before you tonight. I do think that a lot of parents approve of the unarmed as well, since they will make sure the doors are locked, and that really is so very important as well. And we do need that. But maybe we do need to meet in the middle. This current proposal is unacceptable, and I feel that it doesn't reflect the opinions of the majority of parents in this town. It has become political like much else, but we are now talking about the lives of our children. How can we go ahead in good conscience with less protection than our neighboring towns against the recommendations of our own police chief? We were also supposed to have a conservative majority for a Board of Ed, and without naming names, many are disappointed, to say the least, in the voting habits of some current members. I personally helped to campaign and am still hoping to be represented loyally. Voting will for sure take a new meaning going forward. I hope to God our schools remain safe. We have seen too much school violence in this nation, and we demand that our kids are protected to the full extent possible. Is there any other plausible option? We beg you to make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Ola Contreras?
Good afternoon. Ola Contreras, 13 South Mountain Road. Actually, Joyce just said a lot of stuff that I would like to say and address this Board of Selectmen and all the staff and support.
Can you just get a little closer to the mic, because I don't think...
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to express my concerns with directions that's being taken on school security. I'm 100% happy and support a review of security measures being taken at school, but I do not support bringing in unarmed guards. I think in best interest of everybody in this town, in best interest of our children, best interest of school teachers, school staff, is to feel that we're sending kids into a safe environment, that we have done everything we could to give best option under circumstances to protect them in the case of a tragedy that could strike, as we can see, has taken numerous times now throughout the country. And putting unarmed guards there, it's a simple waste of time, of money. It's an illusion of safety, and it's an illusion of action from anybody who would support that option. They need to be trained, they need to be possibly supervised by Chief of Police of Brookfield, they need to be properly weighted with proper background. I come from a family with several generations of military background and law enforcement, and I can tell you I lived on a military base for 11 years plus, and a fly would not pass by with anybody noticing there, and there was a deterrent for anybody to commit any sort of crime. I want the same for our schools. It's illusion to think that situation will just improve out of the blue. Mental health will continue being an issue in the United States until it's addressed on a higher level, and it needs to be done, but it's not happening right now. So for right now, in order for us to act, we have to get the best solution so we can protect our kids until it's better overall on a national level. So that's all I wanted to say, and I'm just asking you to please reconsider the approach with unarmed guards and bring in some heavy duty support from police, from proper personnel with training and proper background to protect our kids. Thank you.
Aaron Scalera?
Hi. I'm here this evening to express my disappointment at the Brookfield Public Schools stance on the protection
I'm sorry. your
5
name-
Jackson Drive, Aaron Scalera, 5 Jackson Drive. I'm here this evening to express my disappointment of the Brookfield Public Schools stance on the protection of our children. After listening to the Board of Selectmen meeting that took place on June 6th, and Mrs. Carr expressed the need for increased security and pledged her support for ASSOs, I decided to do some digging to get a better understanding. Upon my digging, I was disturbed to find out that the BOE felt it was appropriate to stop holding security task force meetings with the last meeting held on November 15th, 2019, and not holding another meeting until June 8th of 2020. During that time, did the district really feel that they were crossing all their T's and dotting their I's in regards to our children's safety? Sadly, I think we can all agree that the answer to that question is no. While I commend Mrs. Carr for taking the stance to better protect our children in the public schools, I wonder if she never felt compelled to speak out, would we still be kicking the can down the road on this issue?
While reading the minutes from 2019, it is noted that only 6 meetings were held, yet one did not even take place because they didn't have a quorum. In the June 14, 2019 meeting, the possibility of bringing a third SRO to the new elementary school was discussed. On October 19, 2019, the Security Task Force tabled a discussion of needed security at the high school because Mr. Belanda wasn't in attendance. A conversation should have taken place if security was being questioned, even if Mr. Belanda wasn't in attendance. On November 15, 2019, Mrs. Scheide, the BHS assistant principal, stated there was increased vulnerability at the high school, and it was said, and I quote, after discussion, the task force agreed that the superintendent should propose a security presence from 2 to 10 p.m., 5 days a week, whether that be an employee or a security service provider. Yet, I am here today. It's August of 2022, almost 3 years later, and I'm wondering what, if anything, that's ever been discussed at a security task force meeting has actually been done. It is infuriating that this increased security is the increased security and follow-through that the district finds acceptable. Every district around us is increasing security, yet the new proposed plan passed by the Board of Ed shows that we are doing the bare minimum. I am so sick of hearing the need for less guns in our school when the people who use them to do harm have no problem arming themselves. You cannot take a stance of employing retired police officers or former military personnel acting as ASSOs as an increased threat. These men and women are highly trained and would be our best possible option to keep our children safe in the event of a breach. Parents' voices and concerns on this issue are being silenced when a Board of Ed member stood here months ago that they would be heard. Mrs. Carr, Mrs. Greenstein, and Mr. Murphy, thank you for being the voice of reason and using your voices to advocate for our children.
3 minutes, Mrs. Blair. Thank you.
I just have, Mrs. Carr, I implore you really to vote no and send the message that this is not good enough.
Thank you. Okay, Monique Matthews.
Monique Matthews, 8 Teed Road. I have 2 children that attend the public school system. I am disappointed in our Brookfield Board of Education recommendation of hiring unarmed guards for our school. The Security Task Force had 5 meetings, and only one of those meetings had several members of the public that attended. The day of the vote to move their recommendation to the Board of Ed only had 1 member of the public in attendance. The rest were Board of Ed members and town employees. At one of these meetings, children who attend Brookfield Public Schools were in favor of having more armed presence within our schools. They felt it was necessary, and I agree with them. I had an experience myself at one of our schools. I watched while someone just entered one of our schools. Their ID wasn't checked, and the person who was there didn't even know who they were, couldn't even remember who they were there to see, and they just let them in. That's scary. According to the Brookfield Board of Education, these unarmed guards would be door greeters and monitoring our camera system at our schools. In the world we live in today, where school shootings are unfortunately happening more and more, why are we not protecting our children with armed guards? Now, I agree, SROs and an armed guard might not prevent the worst from happening, but it can surely slow it down or maybe even stop it. Why are we taking the risk? Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy McElvain.
Betsy McElvain, 127 Long Meadow Hill Road. I'm here just to remind the Board of Selectmen that at the very end of your meeting, you are going to vote, I hope, is to appoint to appoint Elaine Tomenio as a voting member of the Commission on Aging. It's important because Elaine, like many of us volunteers, she wants to be on this commission. She's been with the commission as an alternate non-voting member for several years now, and frankly has done probably more work than any of the rest of us. So I think it's time, and it's unfortunate, it's the vacancy opened up because Susan Bala, who has been a longtime member of the Commission on Aging, passed away in May. But we do need to continue working for the seniors in Brookfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Deb Case?
Good evening, Deborah Case, 21 Meadowview Drive, Brookfield, Connecticut. I'm going to just have to tweak this around already because some people already spoke about what I had written as well. Let me get here. Okay. So I wanted to say good evening. I usually watch all of these meetings from the comfort of my home, but nothing has infuriated me more than the meeting on June 6th, in which you were berated for not following proper procedure. And I thank you for not following proper procedure because you lit a fire. Never in the last 4 years have there been more security meetings than there have been in the last 3 months in what I believe, 4 or 5 years. Yeah, we've pretty much, as you may know or may not know, each year by law, we have to submit to the state of Connecticut our current safety plan. So since we've been defunct pretty much prior to June, the safety committee, I assume that we've been flying at status quo in regards of safety, meaning that we've been pretty much copy and pasting our safety plan each year since 2019, and I find that unacceptable, especially since the year 2020 into 2021, there were 93 school shootings. It's the highest it's been in 20 years. So with all that said, I'm not in agreement in what has been presented by the BOE. I think that you should turn it down. I don't believe that we should be, it's not enough for our children. We need more. Right now, we don't even have anything in place to someone to report a bullying issue or a safety threat. There's not an 800 number, a website, let alone extra armed security in our schools. Other schools have 4 or 5, each school. It's not enough. And I was also very upset to find out, because I did go to the first safety meeting back in June, and I was upset to find out that most of the security task force were BOE members. I found that to be a huge conflict of interest, in my opinion. I also found it very alarming that the very people that were in charge of our security didn't know even what an SRO did, how they worked, what capacity they did. If it wasn't for Chief Puglisi filling them in, no one even at that safety board meeting knew what they did. That's very concerning. So anyway, I just think that more needs to be done. Security measures need to be tightened. We need armed security at our schools, at all the schools. I'm a mom from 2012. My son was in kindergarten at the time. And I can tell you from Sandy Hook, all kinds of things were done. The film was put on the windows at the school. Safety measures were put in place. I haven't really seen much since then. I haven't seen anything really major since then. The SROs came because a group of moms got together with Chief Puglisi back in the day and said, hey, we need SROs at the school. It wasn't the board. He presented it to the board. And that's how SROs became in our schools. So the BOE, I don't know when they would have presented anything safety-wise if it wasn't for you lighting a fire, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Matt Grimes?
Matt Grimes, 11 Orchard Street. Good evening, Board of Selectmen members. Clearly, I don't agree substantively with anything that's been said regarding the school safety issue. However, unfortunately, as a Board of Selectmen, your hands are a little bit tied. You'd be having the same decision whether they presented the plan that was advocated by the minority of the Board of Ed or the one that actually passed. And that decision is, it goes on to the Board of Finance. It either goes with positive recommendation, negative recommendation, or no recommendation from this board. If you because it's got to go to the Board of Finance one way or the other. What I would recommend, though, is that if you're going to send it with a positive recommendation or a negative recommendation or no recommendation at all, you as a Board of Selectmen state the reasons behind your recommendation. State why you're recommending it not be funded by the Board of Finance. State why you're recommending that that it be funded by the Board of Finance. Because without that, I mean, that's about the highest level you can go as a Board of Selectmen, because the substance is with the Board of Ed as far as the safety of the school buildings is concerned. It's vested in law that way, unfortunately. And but what do you have as a Board of Selectmen in this case? You have the bully pulpit. And you can tell the Board of Finance why you think this is or is not a good idea to be funded. So make your decision diligently, and I would, again, ask whatever you send over to the Board of Finance, give the reasons why. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else before a comment? All right. Moving right along.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to just make, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight with all of your concerns. I'm going to especially thank the moms. You know, I have 2 granddaughters that are going to be going to school. I have a son who teaches. At our last meeting, it was the entire Board of Selectmen who said that we are definitely for and in support of armed guards. So I don't want you to think that we are not in favor of that. Now, we have to look at this, and we're going to be talking about this in length in our executive session. But I want everyone to know that to the Board of Selectmen, this is one of the most important decisions that we probably make in the last 20 years. I've been here for 19 years. I spent 14 years on the Board of Education. So I just don't want people to think that this is not a front burner thing, or that that it's just terror. It's not. We are united in the fact that we feel that we need armed guards, and we're in support of that. I just want to make that clear. So thank you, and thank everybody for coming with your concerns tonight.
Anything you want to add, Steve?
No.
Okay. All right. Mr. Annis.
Jay Annis, 12 Kimberly Drive. I am the chairman of the Still River Greenway Ad Hoc Committee, tasked with expanding our greenway north to New Milford.
Oh,
We have a video presentation. We have a committee consisting of 6 members. They're listed there. We have been meeting since 2018, and the first few years were a little bit slow. We're starting to make some better progress lately, which I am going to take you through. Also, let you know that we have some statistics both from our greenway and from the state trail census. We're going to take you through briefly. So, our agenda: history and usage of the greenway, Connecticut Trail Census, grant applications and results, funding options for design, study, and construction, obstacles that we've now overcome, a map showing the proposed route. We have hired an engineering firm named Stantec to help us with a feasibility study. We're going to look at the pros and cons of the route and a timeline for the future. So some key highlights. The ribbon cutting for the greenway was in October of 2016. Our trail usage has increased yearly, except for a few months when the greenway was closed during the COVID-19 pandemic. That was April through June of 2020. Given the fact that we are a relatively small town in Connecticut, the Still River Greenway was still the second most traveled greenway in the state, second only to the Farmington River Trail. Current usage. So the trail is roughly 2.2 miles one way. One of the issues we had early on was not enough parking. In 2019, expansion to increase parking access near the firehouse was granted. In the first half of 2022, There should be a number in there. 90,000 people, pedestrians, used the Still River Greenway. How do we know that number? The Trail Census Bureau, which is a function of the University of Connecticut, has placed monitoring stations on many greenways throughout the state, including the Still River Greenway. It counts people as they walk past the counter. So all of the greenways that have this in the state are counted the same way. Yes, if you make a round trip, you're counted twice, but that's the same for all of the greenways in the state. So for our little greenway to have 90,000 users in the first half of this year is an extraordinary number. So we're going to take a quick look at some Connecticut trail census. So this report was also pulled together by the Trail Census group at UConn. They placed signs with QR codes at greenways across the state. So this data is not just for the Still River Greenway, it's for a number of greenways. But I think that we can extrapolate it to most greenways in the state. The data was collected from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, so a full year of data. 79% of the users primarily walk to use the trail. They average about 74 minutes on the trail, while bicyclists spend about 128 minutes. Those numbers are probably a little higher than the Still River Greenway because they reflect longer trails and greenways. 60% of the users are over the age of 45. 52% earn over $100,000 a year. Bicycling increased almost 8% from the 2019 survey results. 84% of the respondents said they used greenway trails for exercise, recreation, and relaxation. Using greenway trails for family time was up 35% in 2021. The most popular seasons, obviously, are summer, fall, spring, and winter in that order. The economic impact of greenways and trails. It is well known that greenways and trails bring economic activity to the towns that have them. Brookfield, I don't think, is any exception to that. But what kind of numbers are we talking about, and what kind of businesses? So using a word analyzer, the top responses from the Trail Census survey were food, coffee, ice cream, bike shops, restaurants, breweries, I'm not quite sure about that one, and gas. 1 out of every 4.5 users, or 23%, reported spending money while visiting greenway trails, and their average spend is $356 a year. So a significant amount of economic activity is generated by a greenway trail. What do greenways users like most about the trails? Scenery and views, being in nature, quiet and peaceful, well-maintained, shaded, flat surface, close to home, no traffic. Bear in mind that scenery and views, that's going to be important and later in our discussion. So, first step in moving forward with a greenway expansion was a feasibility study. In 2021, we applied for a grant for $229,000 for a study to look at the Still River Greenway expansion, both north to New Milford and south to Danbury. That would come through the DEEP program at the state level, and 20% of that would be funded by 3 participating towns, New Milford, Brookfield, and Danbury. Second application was really more for a phase 1 of the town hall campus, but I've included it here because it did include some improvements to the greenway. And third is basically the same amount of money that we asked for asked DEEP for, but this was a grant program from the Department of Transportation. All 3 of these grants we were turned down. It's interesting to note, especially for the DEEP grant, that we were very close to being funded, but there are only $3 million available in that particular program, which was last November, and only about 10 projects out of 37 actually got funded. The system that is used to determine that was based on a point system with about 30 different requirements with different levels of points. We're going to get into that again in a minute. So, what are our options for funding future design and construction? The DEEP program. The funding has been increased. We have good news and bad news here. The funding has been increased from $3 million to $6 million for future programs. That's going to fund a lot more projects. The funding can be used for either design or construction. We have found that most of the grant programs are for construction only. There are very few that are for design. The grant program for this year, and that's $6 million, however, has been delayed, as last year's contracts have not yet been fully executed because they have manpower issues at DOT and DEEP. So until all of the contracts from last year actually get written and executed, the $6 million grant program can't start. The Connecticut the Greenways Council, DEEP, and the DOT are all in agreement that several projects, including the Still River Greenway expansion, should have been funded in the last round of grants, but were not due to the selection criteria. Ours was deemed to be one of these, and a committee is being set up to revise the requirements of the projects, which will make it a little fairer in the future. Arpa funds. Should there be any unused funds still available from the town's allocation, we might consider using them to fund the design study to avoid delays in the process going forward. LOTSIP. This is a program that Greg has used for our streetscape projects, and if we can get to the design study and get that funded and done, we could then use LOTSIP money for construction. So the obstacles that were overcome. I mentioned that we didn't get any of the grant money. However, our committee requested funds from the Arpa funds the town received, and the town boards accepted that. And we actually have a study now underway using Stantec Engineering that was funded by Arpa funds. I should mention also that we dropped the idea of studying moving south to Danbury. We only have them studying north to New Milford, and the bids actually came in far lower than the $229,000 that we had requested. Probably will be coming in under $50,000 in total. The Stantec study itself, I believe, is $29,000, Greg? Yes. So significantly lower than we had projected. An additional obstacle that we had moving forward was navigating the town center and Four Corners area. The options to move north in virtually everything we looked at were problematic. However, in working with the EDC, a viable route has been included in the Streetscape 6 proposal, which will get us north of the Four Corners area, and once we get north of Four Corners, things will go a little bit smoother. So the Stantec feasibility study that's now underway, what will it provide us? A recommended route with pros and cons plus a cost estimate, a review of alternate routes and why they were not selected, easements that would be required, potential issues with floodplains, wetlands, lands, and designated species areas, and assistance with presentation to the public. I apologize that this is a little hard to see, but if you can follow the green line, that is the proposed route that we are looking at taking north to New Milford. And that I mentioned scenery being one of the main reasons people use the greenways. one of the things that we're trying to do is to hug the Still River as close to it as we can where it's viable. And you'll see that that's where the green line is following. So, an estimated timeline and the next steps. Stantec will continue to study proposed and alternate routes. We anticipate that by mid to late September, we will have a public meeting to review their preliminary findings and the proposed route. Late September to mid-October, Stantec will then finalize their report and study. Once that's completed, we hope to issue RFPs for final design probably by the end of the year or the first quarter of next year, and a lot of that will depend on when the grant programs are actually up and available. So, that's my update. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Jay.
You're welcome.
Every time I hear you present on the Still River Greenway, my mind goes back to where you've come and what the work that you and your committee have put in, and it's astounding, so thank you.
Well, hopefully it won't be 15 years this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've invited Chief Puglisi and Dr. Burrill separately. This is not about school security. I've asked Chief to touch on speed across town, and he so graciously said he would comment on that and what his PD is doing to address that. So, Chief Puglisi, if you don't mind sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to address some of the concerns about speeding. First, just let me say that the Brookfield Police make a concerted effort for motor vehicle enforcement. In the past, we've made use of DOT grants to support law enforcement, DUI grants, cell phone grants. I'm not aware of any speeding grants, speeding enforcement grants that are available right now. But what we are doing right now, we're doing more with less. We're having, in this current environment, we're having a hard time finding qualified officers to replace the officers who have retired. So we're forced to do more with less. One of the ways we're doing that is with the use of the electronic speed signs. Two of the signs that we currently have the ability to capture information. They don't capture the plate or the car that was speeding or anything like that, but they give us data that we can use to then move to actual enforcement. So the use of those cameras has, the speed cameras has helped us tremendously because it's capturing the number of vehicles, it's capturing the speeds, the times, and we use that to then schedule the officers in selective enforcement. So what we've done with the selective enforcement, we used to base it just on crashes and complaints from the public. Now we also add, if we have complaints from the public, we try to put the signs there first, if they're not being utilized in another part of town, to get a good feel of whether putting an officer there for an hour or two at a time is a good use of our manpower, because like I said, we're very short of people right now. So when manpower allows, we will put people there on selective enforcement. We've increased the selective enforcement to almost a daily assignment based on these complaints from the public. I make a request to the public to continue calling when you have these concerns about the speed on your roads. We've had some issue with signage complaints on some of the roads that really weren't speed related, but more, no through trucks and stuff like that, only to find out that the roads were at one time designated no through trucks, such as up to south. But over the years, the signs disappeared, and people were saying that, hey, we're crossing to our neighbors in Newtown, the signage is there. So that's something that we've been able to address as well. And that's pretty much my report. There's, it's not as exciting as the Greenway, but it's just.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry. Chief,
if we do selective enforcement, we see spots where there's speeding going on, you know there's a number of cars coming in, and then you put a police officer there, you're stopping people, you're talking to them, you're issuing tickets. Does that have a long-term effect? Have there been any studies that that helps over time, or do you have to stay on top of it?
I don't know that answer at all, but just based on my experience, I would say that it has somewhat of an effect in reducing crashes. They've shown that. But as far as reducing people's
lead feet
desire to speed or the need to speed, it tends to, as soon as we're not there, people go back to their old ways and habits. So unless they've been involved in an accident or they witnessed an accident, the determining factor is not whether the officer is there, because for that short period of time, you know, there's a pucker factor and people get upset, you know, that, oh, well, I'm getting pulled over, and it changes their behavior for a short period of time.
Thank you, appreciate it.
We've been on Long Meadow Hill Road for 38 years, and we live right in the middle of that stretch. We've got about a mile stretch of dead straight road. And I would venture to say that probably could have been one of the first or second worst situations or places for speeding 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I can't tell you how many times we're woken up in the middle of the night with cars in people's front lawns, accidents. The police put up the electronic boxes, and it stopped. Now, on our road, it stopped. It's not like it's better. It basically stopped. And even to this day, now they haven't been up for a while, but even to this day, we'll get that occasional bike or that occasional speed. But I can't tell you how much of an effect that did have on our road. And to me, that's one of the main highways going up and down. So I just wanted to put a plug in for them. So.
I've had a person killed in the parking lot.
It was very effective for us.
Yeah. I appreciate all of that information. It's helpful just to relay what is being done back to the public, especially when there are a lot of concerns coming in. So thank you. And Chief Puglisi and I and his whole team work together on some of this just to make sure that I'm relaying concerns from the public that I may get that they may not have taken to him and his force. But we appreciate everything you guys do. I know it's tough out there and that you're working short-staffed. So.
There is a monthly report that I do to the police commission as well, so if anybody's interested, just come to that meeting.
Okay, separate but similar. The West COG, the Council of Western Governments for our region that includes 18 towns, has just received state funding to address safety concerns across the municipalities in our region. It's a separate plan to keep roads safe. It does not encompass education on driving distracted vis-a-vis cell phone usage or driving under the influence. That's a separate package. So the funding only addresses making roads safer. So for Brookfield, I shared the list with you guys. If you hadn't already, you probably already know what was happening. But they're putting in a crosswalk in your area, ma'am, that you mentioned. There's I think 5 or so parts of Brookfield that will be receiving this. At that meeting, I asked about speed tables and the rumble strips, and they said that that's not funded. Newtown has Queen Street, which has, to slow down the long stretches such as Long Meadow, the south of Tuces of Brookfield, but there's no money for that. So I just wanted to share that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And Dr. Burrill. Or, I asked for a school update, so.
Thank you, Mrs. Carr. I asked Mrs. Fernandez to come up because she provides a report at each of the board meetings specifically on Candlewood Lake that I add to. So there's a few things that she'll share. We're really excited, obviously very exciting times. Before I get there, though, I did want to introduce Anna Mann. Dr. Mann is our new assistant superintendent. She just started today, and she's staying for the duration. We work hard here in Brookfield.
It's been a long day.
So we're obviously really excited. I mean, this is Harry was on the board when we went forward with the school project. It is 6 years in the making. We're thankful to everyone for all of their support throughout. It's really important to let everybody know that not only do we update on Candlewood Lake's progress at each and every one of the board meetings, we then, in our 3 main points, within the next few days after that, share information, and almost every time, Candlewood Lake is updated, and that is updated on Facebook in what's called the 3 main points. Additionally, we take that information, I pass it along to Ginny and Tara, Steve before that, in the town spotlight. So for at least 2 years now, there's been updates monthly in the town resources as well. Everything's on the town and district website. Specifically, the district website is newschoolproject.brookfieldps.org. Every single document that we've reviewed, every single PowerPoint, the most recent PowerPoints from June, where you can see renderings versus the actual progress pictures are up there. If you'd be so kind, at the next regular meeting, I'd like to bring back an update of renderings versus new pictures of progress. We're excited about that, and we certainly want to get another tour hosted by the NBC within the month or two for all the elected boards to take another tour of the building like they did back in May. Having said that, we are on our adjusted timeline. We are still on time for our mid-year move of the Huckleberry students and staff, kind of in that late December, early January transition. We have that all articulated in our school calendar. Really excited about that. We'll send updates once we get school underway to families so everybody knows exactly what's going on. We'll get those reminders out. But it's really important to know, I'm going to talk very briefly about kind of the interior work in terms of not the physical work, but the actual school work, the mission.
Can I ask one quick question? Sure. For that transition, December, January, can you just elucidate for people watching who it is that's going to be moving? Sure. Because I know a lot of people don't pay attention to everything.
More than happy to.
Take 2 minutes and
Thank you, Steve. Yes.
Let parents know.
So in the way we're setting up the move is the plan is the Huckleberry School itself needs to be demolished to complete the driveway, parking lot, et cetera, to accommodate over 1,000 students and up to 200 staff. I think we have about 280 parking spots being designed. That can't be done while construction's going on and a demolition is going on. So once the school is mostly finished or totally finished come late November, December, and we're ready to move in, the grades 2, 3, and 4 students from Huckleberry will move in with their teachers and all the ancillary staff into the new building. They will hopefully, the wings where grades 2, 3, and 4 will actually be is where they're actually going to move into. Everything will be completed in the specific areas. And we will teach the second half of the year over at Candlewood Lake with temporary parking. That's going to be about 115 spaces when you add in cafeteria. Besides teachers, people forget we have paraprofessionals, cafeteria workers, custodians, maintenance, parent visitors, other visitors. I mean, it's just so much space you need at a school for parking. That's the second half of the year. While that is going on, come sometime in February, demolition will start of the Huckleberry facility itself. That'll come down in a very, it's a very regulated, safe fashion that it'll come down in. As that comes down and is discarded and moved off campus, all of those materials, then you'll see the bulldozers and the backhoes and the asphalt trucks, and they'll be working on the parking lot design, the driveway design, et cetera. And then that should be finished sometime in June, and then we'll be making preparations for the center school kids to come over, and then we'll be fully occupied. So we're really excited about that. That will be at the beginning of the 23-24 year.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked me to articulate that, Steve. Thank you. So just a couple of things. We have a Candlewood Lake planning team. It's 25 people strong. We've got representatives from each of our areas. So we have teachers, custodial representation, secretary representation. What we do there is we have what are called our user groups, and so we're walking through every nuance of the school to make sure we're ready to go. We also worked on, under Dr. Pepsowski's leadership, the mission and belief statements of the school. Dr. Pepsowski, who is now the one-year principal at Huckleberry, will be moving into the principal position of Candlewood Lake Elementary. We're really excited about that. Dave is a longtime administrator in the district and actually had a 99% positive return on his panorama survey in terms of parent and staff excitement about his leadership. So we're really excited about his tenure there. Having said that, we're ready to go. We have these user groups have worked on all kinds of things. Most recently, what are called smallwares, staplers, the food service. What kind of pans and pots do you need there? I mean, everything down to that level of detail And so the other thing we've done is I've sent out communications to the PTO leadership from Center and Huckleberry for two really important pieces. One is they need to ultimately dissolve those PTOs and then form one new PTO, so they need to be thinking about that. And of course, the school is here to help them in any way we can. In addition to that, talking to them and other faculty and longtime Brookfield alumni of Center and Huckleberry who want to have some maybe historic celebrations of each of the schools before we move on from them. So those are starting to get in the works, and you're feeling some momentum come there. So we're really excited about that. And if anybody drives by and takes a look at Huckleberry, the stone facade is starting to go up, and a lot of other utilities are starting to go in. But I'll let Mrs. Fernandez talk to that.
So speaking of some of those finer details, some of the stonework on the outside, there's actually a lot of different materials that are going to be on the exterior of the building. There's stone, wood, there's metal. So the stone veneer is actually complete in a lot of areas, and there's some brick that's beginning. There will be a gas line that's getting tied into the building very soon, so you might see some trenches going from the road to the building. And the playground equipment is being designed right now and coordinated with our athletic director. Moving inside the building, so there are about 4 or 5 different areas, each lettered. In 2 of those areas, there is framing, mechanical engineering, and plumbing. That's all the stuff that's above the ceiling. Windows, sheetrock, and taping is all completed in 2 of those areas, where it's still ongoing in 4 of them. So actually, if you take a close look at the building, you might see that some areas look very complete, where you have sheetrock and it looks ready for painting, and then other areas where the floor has just really been poured. So they're really working in stages, and a lot of areas still have a lot of work that's ongoing. Like Dr. Brill said, all of the furniture, fixtures, equipment, all of those items have been purchased and they're scheduled for delivery. And in terms of our moving, we have a moving vendor that is being selected, and moving supplies have already been delivered to Huckleberry, so some of the teachers are going to be involved in packing up their classrooms, but all of the physical larger items and even the teachers' boxes that they packed will be moved over into the new building. So that's generally where the project is in terms of the nitty-gritty details of it, but we're moving along very well, and it looks really exciting. So. Yeah.
So when Rosa mentions the athletic director being involved in the playscapes and so forth and getting, people wonder why. We often forget to mention Steve is also the director K-12 of health and PE, physical education. So he has a big role in that. We also have worked that through some of our special educators. There's going to be 3 playscapes, they'll all be accessible. So we wanted to make sure of that. So that's really exciting there. The other piece is the technology package was voted on by the Board of Ed a couple of weeks back. And we've had meetings with the state, and we're waiting for final state approval on that. So there's just lots going on, and we're really excited about it. And thank everybody for their continued support.
Appreciate the update. It's important for people who aren't affiliated with the school system in town to understand as well, and I think you guys do a great job of getting it out there, and I've been trying to share on social media, but just this is another platform for you guys to be able to share the fine work that's being done. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. And again, go to the website, New School Project. It's right under Board of Education. You can see every presentation, information, dates, whatever you're looking for, you can find it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along, did you guys have anything on the new school project? No. I did want to add a couple announcements here. First of all, the spotlight came out, I think it was earlier this morning, and the link to the sign up for Everbridge was misrouted. I don't know if that's been corrected, but I know the announcement went out with the correction. So I wanted to really point that out, because for those of you who are already registered with Everbridge, you can go in and make updates if you've had any changes to your phone numbers or anything of that sort for your contact information. But for those of you who are not currently registered with Everbridge, please visit the website, spread the word with your neighbors, friends, family in town. It is the emergency link essentially from our law enforcement and for public health and safety. If there's ever an emergency, that is how you will be contacted, be it on your cell phone, via text or message, or a call with a recording, or on your landline. So that information is on the website now, right, Dan? Yeah. All right, so that was the first update I just wanted to point out that little correction and stress the importance of signing up for Everbridge. We are no longer using Code Red, which was used for COVID, so Everbridge is our main way to communicate across town should we have an emergency. The Charter Revision Commission just held a public hearing in this room from 6 to 7 just before this meeting, and I just wanted to point out that they do not have an easy task ahead of them, and they're starting their fine work. So if you need to reach out to that commission for any reason, or spread the word as well that they're working on revisions to our charter right now, if people don't know that. I also wanted to mention that earlier this spring I had applied for a grant sponsored by Senator Murphy's office to receive funding for what was approved in our budget for our townwide communication system. And disappointingly, this morning I found out that we were denied any funding for that request. So I did want to share that with the public. It's a $6 million ask that we'll have to go out to bond for, and there were 340 applicants to Senator Murphy's office, and we were not one of the recipients for a single penny of funding, unfortunately. And finally, I just wanted to note a time change to the Coffees with the Community. We've adjusted the time frame for that from 9 to 10, and our next coffee will be on Saturday, August 27th from 9 to 10.
At Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you, Harry. All right, moving along to correspondence. Does anybody have anything to comment on correspondence?
I read through them. I have no issues with
Some of the items on the list we're going to be addressing as new items and updates as part of the agenda. So, over to you, Marcia.
Okay, as far as budget updates, there's a lot of financial stuff on the agenda, so I'm trying to jump ahead and give you some information. But as far as the 21-22 year, we still don't see any surprises in that year. It's tracking as suspected. We're working on closing the books and preparing the financial statements for the auditors who will arrive in mid-September. You've got a request from the Board of Ed. They've requested $62,000 in their budget for unexpected COVID and special ed costs. The town's contingency fund was established partially for this purpose, and there's currently $128,700 in that contingency fund, which will more than cover the requests. The police, later in the agenda, are looking for $141,000 from the Police Outside Services Fund. Although the books aren't fully closed yet, it is estimated that there's sufficient funding between the Outside Services Fund and the Asset Forfeiture Fund to cover this request and the other two requests that were discussed in the budget discussions. And I gave you a piece of paper tonight with an orange highlight on the title that just shows you just a draft of where it looks like that fund is coming in. That we have to do the final closing, but I don't expect, I've got to post workers' comp and things. I don't expect anything major to be different. So that's 21-22. 22-23. There are a number of items that we're addressing in the 22-23 budget, and we provided you with a budget dashboard in the agenda so that you know all our known or suspected issues that are coming up, that they'll all summarized in one place. And this will help you to make your decisions, is what we're hoping. So some of the things that are happening in the 22-23 budget, health insurance. We're a member of the state partnership plan. They gave us an estimate of how much they were going to increase in January as we were working on our budgets. We finished our budgets, and then they came in with the real update which was higher than what they had expected. So the total effect on the current year budget is between the town and the school, we need another $135,000. And we're providing this as information, and at a later meeting we'll talk about possible sources of how to find that. School security is looking for funding, and that'll be discussed later in your budget, but that's certainly something that we're going to have to find the funding for. Fuel. I had provided you a summary with the agenda, and I had noted that Ken Post, the finance director at the school, I had not gotten together with him. We were still working through the numbers. I did get together with him today, so the numbers are smaller, but we're still looking at about $338,000 that we're going to need between the town and the school as additional funding. And the worksheet for that is on letter size paper, just the updated one. There was one with the agenda. We had some more information that came in today from our vendor that shows the gallons for the last 4 years. The biggest difference for why it was so high on Friday and not as high, still high, but not as high today, is that I didn't have the gallons of gas at the school side that they had used, and so I was trying to back into that. But they had a lot of gallons that they used last year, so starting in about April, they started paying current rates and not the locked-in prices that we had. So the best estimate that we have today is we'll need about $338,000 more. But that changes every day, either up a little or down a little. And the best estimate that we can get from the industry and from reading is that with the supply shortage, it's going to get worse in the winter. So it's more likely that the prices will go up instead of to go down. And so we might be well advised to lock in now, even though we hate these prices. The WPCA is asking for something between $0 and $147,000 for the $900,000 sewer project in the Four Corners area, if they get the steep funding for $500,000. So we've got to have that on our dashboard, that we're aware of that may be coming up. The boys' locker room, we haven't received any formal requests for more funding, but it's looking like we may need at least another $50,000 for that project. And then there's just some small items that we're tracking. We put anything on the dashboard that we know about that's definite, probable, or possible. We tried to divide it up for you. Even if we don't have the numbers yet, that just so you're aware of everything that we're aware that's out there. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah, I've got a question. So you're saying, as of today, our overrun for this fiscal year is going to be $338,000 is currently?
Our best estimate is $338,000.
We need to find $338,000.
Yes.
If nothing else changed.
Correct.
For the fuel only, and all these other things.
Correct. So the last one is the updated budget dashboard. That for the numbers that are quantified, there are some things aren't here that are not quantified. For example, we're finding places are charging surcharges. There's inflationary things that are coming in, both on the town side and on the Board of Ed side, that we can't quantify right now. For everything that we've quantified here, we're looking for $1.5 million. That's approximately 3/4 of a mil. Some are operating expenditures that will carry forward to mill rates next year and tax rates next year. Some are one-time capital expenditures that are just one time. As part of, before we make a presentation to you of where we might get the money and how we might get all this to balance, we have a worksheet that would show where the money is going to, where we might be getting it coming from, and what that will have as an effect on future years' mill rates. That, and we're still working through that. We just finished the fuel estimates this afternoon, so we are, now we can work a little bit more of that and get you the worksheet.
So, you mind
I
if
have
I ask
two-
a couple questions?
Go for it.
Go ahead, Larry.
Two quick ones. Are we paying any, to lock in, are we paying any, I don't know if it's a surcharge or any fee to lock in for our fuel or gas? Because I know some of the fuel companies, if you want to lock in now, you have to pay a fee to lock in.
We haven't heard of that. We've talked about the rates, that it would be a big surprise with this particular vendor if there was a charge. That what they do is that you have to lock in for a certain number of gallons, and if you don't get that many gallons, you still have to pay a charge. This particular vendor that we have now, we've had for several years, has not charged us that. But we had another vendor that we used in COVID, and we didn't use the gasoline that we thought because schools were shut down, and we did have to pay a charge. But it was on the back end for not using everything that we thought we were going to use. But
Yeah, I only ask because the fuel company that we have been using is charging 67 cents on a dollar for every gallon that you're going to purchase. It's basically just a gouge, is what it is.
I'm not following you.
In other words, if we want to lock in at a certain rate for the next year or 2 years, we would have to pay a charge per gallon up front to get that price. In other words, they're pennies on a gallon.
So they gave us quotes today that did not include that, or if they did include it, that they didn't isolate it separately, that they gave us, here are the prices that it would look like if we were, and they change every day, here are the prices that it would look like if we just didn't lock in and bought off the market, and here are the prices if we locked in at the rates we've been locking in at. So if they included an extra charge for that, we would, they didn't isolate it separately.
Okay.
And what we would anticipate that we would do is, last time when we went out to bid, because it's a certain, it's a pretty quick turnaround, you want the prices that day, that we went to a number of different vendors to get pricing. And so if they were charging it and others were not charging it, their prices would, you would think, would be higher.
My second one, real quick, as far as the grant for the sewer, because we don't really have a cost and we're not sure what the company wants, will that affect the possibility of getting the grant? I mean, does that have any effect on the grant?
No.
Because there's-
We're
okay.
going to touch on the grant
Okay,
coming up.
good. Thank you. Sorry, Steve.
Did you have a question, Steve?
I had a question, but the paperwork answered it, so.
All right. This dashboard was really helpful, Marcia. Thank you for
Yeah,
putting
thank
that
you.
together.
I do have one concern, though, while we're talking about finances.
Yeah.
We've listed 6 or 7 or I don't know how many different things that are going to push us over budget, or we might have to put in next year's budget. And I'd really like to see a full picture of everything, fuel, health costs,
Yeah.
whatever it is, in the next month, so we know where we're going into, both for this year and for next year, because it's going to be difficult.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about it.
that's why I
And,
mentioned
you know,
fuel.
if we're going to spend money on the sewers in the Four Corners to do the Brookfield Market area, you know, any expenses that we have, we want to elucidate them, understand them, and know, where's this money going to come from? Is it coming from contingency? Are we going to bond for it? Are we going to put it in next year's budget?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to make decisions on these things one-off. I think that's
That's
a
why-
recipe for disaster.
That's why I mentioned to you on Saturday, I want to have a special meeting for next Monday,
Yeah.
the 8th of August, solely to address finances.
Good.
And we do have, it's multiple years out, just because we've got that debt bubble.
Yeah.
And showing how it would be tracking each of the years as we go forward if all these things were done.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, aside from some of the big asks, nobody anticipated a 9% increase in fuel costs. So, it's a sign of the times. The school security, yes, it's time to do something. But we have been, anticipating this debt bubble, so there's no secret there. Just taxes. Since I walked in the door, I've been saying it, taxes are going to go up. There's no way around it. That's why it's disappointing when you apply for a grant and you don't get it. Anything else for Marcia?
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia. All right. The Board of Ed sent a letter dated July 2022 to request a special appropriation to fund a budget shortfall they had from last year in the amount of $62,416.72. They stated in their letter, that's included in the packet, that it was due primarily to COVID costs in excess, totaling $93,639.20, and on extra special education tuition in the amount of $61,603.34. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand this. So the Board of Ed is asking for 62,416, right? Pursuant to the, and this is correct, pursuant to the private budget discussions. What I didn't quite fully understand, BPS has been required to expend $93,000 on COVID-related items and had on-plan spending above the budget of $61,000 for special ed. So why are we being asked for 62?
I actually asked that same question at about 2 o'clock this afternoon.
I just want to understand that.
Ken, Rosa?
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just asked to be here because Bob wasn't able to be here. So just in my capacity as chair of the Finance Committee, we did spend $93,000 on unbudgeted COVID costs.
Right.
We never wanted to budget for COVID costs to begin with. And as you know, special education tuition especially is a very volatile budget item. So we did spend $61,000 of that. You're familiar with the arrangement that those funds, the unbudgeted COVID, and in particular special education, because we took higher risks within our budget several years ago, the arrangement was to run those items through our budget, our operating budget, and the town would hold the contingency for unexpected. We did manage to keep most of those expenses within our budget, primarily due to a large spending freeze that we implemented back in the spring. So it's just $62,416 that we were not able to contain.
So your total expenses were 90 and 60, 150
Yes.
some odd,
Mhm.
but you were able to make up most of that
Yes,
through savings in other areas, is that correct?
yes,
So your ask now is 62.
correct.
Okay,
How much was the savings in the spending freeze?
what's
It was
93?
390,000, yep,
Thank you, Rosa.
yep.
Any other questions on that one?
No, not for me.
So I'd like to make a motion that the selectmen approve the transfer for the year ending June 30, 2022 from town contingency line 1059800-58414 to the Board of Ed budget in the amount of $62,416.72 and forward the transfer request to the Board of Finance for approval.
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
It's in response to the Board of Ed letter dated 27 July 2022.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
None.
Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Police Outside Services Fund Request. This letter came from the Chief of Police on June 1st, 2022. And their firearms training group has identified the need to replace and upgrade patrol support rifles, accessories, in-vehicle locks, and weapon storage lockers. I'd like to make a motion that the selectmen approve and forward the PD Outside Services appropriation request in the amount of $141,025.59 for funding the capital purchase to replace the rifles, accessories, and weapon storage lockers to the Board of Finance.
I'll second that for discussion purposes.
Go ahead, Steve. Sounds like you got something to say.
I have a couple questions. John, could you join us? Is that all right?
Absolutely, that's why he's here. One of the reasons why he's here.
Can I ask Captain Donadio? to
Sure,
come up?
absolutely. Matt, come on down. You say we have an weapons storage installation of 38 lockers. Don't we have storage now?
Currently, what we have for rifles is a 20 locker, a 20
Could
rifle.
you put the microphone up a little bit? Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, currently, we have a locker that we actually had custom built by Aldine Metal 20 years ago. It only holds 20 rifles, and because of its configuration, it doesn't allow us to fit some of our equipment.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's 20. We own 25, and we have 34 sworn officers right now. At this moment, we add anybody. We don't really have a facility to store any of it.
Okay. Is it typical to have one rifle for almost for each officer?
Well, yeah. We started this program about 20 years ago, and we rolled in basically selling older equipment, and we've been putting it together, patching it together for literally the last 20 years. We started with 8 and tried to distribute how we deployed them, and then added them into the mix to the point that we got to everybody, so that anybody who responds to any scenario would be prepared for whatever.
And just for information purposes, why would we use suppressors on guns?
It's a good question. There's a trend in law enforcement to go that route, because what you also find is in any kind of situation, auditory exclusion is an issue already because of the stresses involved.
Right.
But then with the actual impact and the sounds, or a 223 rifle, that sound report is damaging to hearing. So it's a guarantee going to affect communications. And it's not an uncommon thing where, even teams that don't have their ear protection in place end up having to be pulled out because they can't communicate anymore.
Okay.
So it's not going to actually silence anything. It just knocks down like 4 decibels. It changes the report. The perception of direction also changes, which is also helpful. But it would protect officers and anybody in the vicinity.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate it.
John, I have one quick question on the rifles.
Something every time.
With this added money, how many rifles would we end up having on the force?
The request is for 37 rifles. That was a number that came from we're currently at 34 sworn. If there were any additional officers, which I'd like to see, but that would be something that would be coming, that would give us at least 2 additional rifles if we were to go to 36, and then with 1 spare. And that's spare all equipment. I mean, every piece, not just the rifle. The rifles are like roughly half of this.
Right.
It's the accessories, then the storage, and the weapon lockers in the vehicles.
And your existing equipment, what do you do with that? The existing rifles?
Well, that's
trade them in, or?
Yeah, that they would probably the best thing to do with that would be to trade in through the purchasing company, because they deal with those weapons for law enforcement.
Okay.
So it would be a clean trade. There would be some cost recouped, but I can't speak to that, and that's one of those things that seems to change daily, as far as what you're going to get.
Are the current rifles Sig Sauers also, or?
No, they're not. They're Bushmasters, and actually, we only own 25 of the 33 that we have.
Okay.
The rest of them, 7 other rifles, are from the 1033 program through the federal government. So we're borrowing them. They are old M16s that we've converted to semi-automatic and tried to throw parts on, and they're piecemeal. And it's time. 20 years is a good time.
You
And
could still probably get some good money for those.
Well, we probably won't get the best money because we're not going to be selling them person to person. We'd be selling them to a distributor. I think you're going to get 50%, but that's still considerable.
Okay. That's it for my question.
Yeah, and again, just for a resident that comes up to me and asks why, what would the need be for us to have the right, and not that I'm against it, but I know I'm gonna get asked this question. What is the need for us to have a rifle and a locker for every single one of our policemen?
Well, I think safe storage of firearms goes without the need for much support. It's a police department, and if weapons are being stored in lockers behind unlocked doors with
No,
cameras.
I'm talking about what is the warranty?
Why does a police officer need a rifle?
Why do we need 37?
Why do we need 37? And again,
Oh,
it's not that I'm against it.
absolutely. Well,
Why do we need 37?
The premise from the very beginning when we started this program, which was actually fairly early on in rifles being deployed in law enforcement in Connecticut, I mean, we were ahead of the curve. We looked at it as every weapon in the hands of each officer, sighted in for that officer, with their comfort level established with that weapon. We've also found that even with like portable radios, that ownership of that weapon, this is your tool, this pistol is yours, that only works out to benefit the department. I mean, their comfort level, the reliability, the maintenance, at every level, it makes sense. And there are places that still do it, where they have less and they pass them around, but they're all moving away from that because it's just, this is a 20-year investment. This is not something that you're going to be doing in 5 years. This equipment, lasts a long time.
Is this price locked in, or is there going to, is it
This
gonna
is
be more expensive?
this is a recent price, but 6 months ago it was 30% less. And this has been on the 10-year plan for at least 8 years. I know because I put it there, and I was like, "This is great. We'll prepare and we'll get it done." This was proposed for the last year's budget. It was recommended that this would be something that the boards would be willing to support, but it did get pushed, and it's just one of those things that it's easy to kick down the road, but I feel personally that it's a good time to do it.
And when the former chief of police, Jay Purcell, took me in to the storage facility, you could tell just upon first glance it's time for a refresh.
It's been patched together, and we're using that room for so many different things.
Yeah.
Our ESU people have a spot there, the ammunition storage, and we can't fit all the rifles in, so it's time.
Okay. Any further discussion? Further questions? Oh, thank you, gentlemen. All right. You seconded it?
Yeah, I seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This next item, there was a letter addressed to us as a Board of Selectmen from the Zoning Board of Appeals requesting tablets so that they can set up, not every room in this town hall is equipped with being able to record sessions and public meetings. So the ask was that they get a tablet, and I put this on here as an agenda item again because it was addressed to us as a Board of Selectmen for consideration. I do have to say that in speaking with our Director of IT, it's just a bridge too far at this juncture. A, affordability. B, if you do for one, you have to do for all. If Town Hall were to close down in this moment and I asked employees to work from home, we don't even have enough laptops for our employees to work from home. Not to mention the fact about connectivity and allowing access to all of our boards and commission members to access town information, especially the YouTube accounts of the town. It would just allow for too much, I think, with just one person in our IT department.
While the idea, I think, is a good one,
Yeah.
I think we need to look at this as a town-wide structure. Does it make sense? What do we need? What equipment do we need? How do we keep track of the equipment? Who's responsible for the equipment? Who's going to set it up? Who's going to use it? All of those things. I think it needs more discussion. I don't have
And Dan
an
is
issue with it.
working on that.
Yeah,
It's
but
part
right
of his
now
10-year
with the
plan.
expenses we're facing, it's really difficult it's really nice to have, but I don't see it at this point in time, perhaps in next year's budget. Right, look at it to see, and then have Dan look at it and see, well, okay, what do we need
Yeah,
for
Dan is
each
looking at it.
board, right? That's how I feel.
So, no, sorry. So, I didn't really want to take this to any kind of a vote, it was just here
No,
for
no, yeah.
discussion purposes. And so y'all aware of the request that came through. We'll continue to look at that. The next item is for social services. This is the annual request to contribute to programs that apply for funding. I'm sure you gentlemen are familiar with this,
Yeah, very.
so if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the applications that came through from the different agencies.
I'm fine.
I looked at all of them, and they're all agencies that help Brookfield residents.
Yeah.
I mean, they can, you know, regional hospice can tell you exactly how many people from Brookfield they are.
Yep,
And I think Ellen and her team did a great job at vetting this.
I agree. Unfortunately, we aren't in a position to provide more, but each of these agencies really could use more help where they can. So, a motion to approve the social services, other services line item in the amount of $10,600 for this fiscal year 22-23, in the grant request from local and regional social services for nonprofit organizations, as noted on the list that's submitted as part of this packet from 7/28/2022.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And our updates. Not too long ago, I had mentioned during a Board of Selectmen meeting about, well, to district or not to district our health department. And this all was prompted with Doc's announcement for his upcoming retirement. Doc has been with us for a very long time. He is a force. He essentially is irreplaceable. He's been a part-timer who has been working much, much more than part-time at a very affordable rate, I should say. So, what do we do? Marcia, Fern, and I have put in a lot of time and energy and effort over the past 6 months at least in examining this. Other towns recently, New Milford specifically, has opted into the Housatonic Valley Regional Health District, which has grown substantially. I think there's 6 member towns of that district now. There's been several articles in different news outlets on the either success or failures of that district, which turned my attention towards Newtown. And we've had several conversations with Newtown, not Newtown town, but the health district that is Newtown, which encompasses Roxbury, Bridgewater, and Newtown. In my most recent conversation with Newtown Health District, they are not ready to receive any further municipalities. So where does that leave us again? Right now, we need to find a replacement for Doc. I don't think a part-time health director is what Brookfield needs at this juncture. I think we need a full-time health director. And just for your information, the requirements for a health director, and I mentioned this last time I touched on it, are now for a Master's of Public Health. So you have to maintain an MPH in order to be eligible for the position according to the state. Masters of Public Health are in high demand right now, as are many, many of our skill sets for people who work municipal government jobs. Another one is our tax assessor, our tax collector, people like Marcia, our comptrollers. These are, again, high demand, low supply. We'll be hard pressed to find people with the right skills if we're not commensurate with the going rate of what people are being paid to fulfill these positions. Health director being of utmost importance, especially coming out of the pandemic, and just a lot of people across town, I think, feel strongly, from what I've been hearing anyway. I haven't put out any public poll or anything like that, or a survey. But, you know, people like to have things here in Brookfield to take care of our residents, our townspeople right here at home, and potentially not have to travel to Newtown. All this to say, I am not opposed to districting, but the Newtown, the board of their health district hasn't even considered, you know, receiving new members, and they're not going to be receiving new members unless our departments are fully staffed. And remember, we're still missing a sanitarian, which is another one that we're going to be hard pressed to find. So I think when we talk about finances at our special meeting that I mentioned earlier, we should definitely address the cost differential for going from part-time to full-time for this position.
It's going to be a significant expense. It is. And I don't have a disagreement with going into a health district, but given the issues that New Milford and other towns have had, they grew too fast, too soon. They're not getting, nothing against any of the people that are working really, really hard, but they went from one town to 6, I think, right? Yeah. In a period of like 9 months. So I would lean towards having a full-time health director in town. Doc has been doing yeoman's work here, and I think it would be very, very noticeable, even if we joined another health district, at the changes. Because he does things that are not absolutely required, but he just does them to serve our town. So we have to look at the cost of joining a health district versus direct. But my question here is, when Doc retires, we have to have somebody in place, right?
Yeah.
Or have somebody agree, like Newtown, okay, we'll be your support on a temporary basis. You can't not have somebody.
Well, Paul Avery would by default become the acting director,
Yeah.
but that's temporary solution.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's great.
Yeah.
But he's got so much on his plate already. If something big happened, he's gonna be hard pressed.
Especially coming out of COVID, just with playing catch up on inspections of restaurants.
Plus the
And
assistant sanitarian who works with it,
we've
right?
got failing septic systems,
Yeah.
we've got pools that people are building because everybody's home now and has money to build a pool, apparently.
Yes.
And
Okay,
not work.
So you brought this up for discussion purposes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just,
I-
I
my-
just financially, I want you guys to think about this, and when we meet, we'll take it.
Because my understanding to
To
hire a
vote.
full-time MPH, you're talking somewhere between 140 and 160,000.
Not that high, not that high,
No? That's what I had heard.
I mean, it depends on experience. If you get
Yeah.
a brand new right out of grad school, you know, it's just gonna depend, and we might not get any takers, so.
You might not.
I mean, financially, right now, I would, we're at a critical state financially with spending money. So if you're gonna spend money, it's gotta be on a top priority. And to me, right now, top priority is safety, school and municipal safety, and public health. And I think to not go with a full-time right now would not be wise. I think this is money that would be well spent because of, you know, what's going around with different COVIDs and with mental health and with just needing someone to organize and run and head our health program. I would be fully in favor of a full-time rather than going to a part-time or to a community.
I
Yeah,
think we
well-
need to look at the numbers.
I don't think we have an option. They allowed Doc to be part-time as grandfathered in.
Right.
But when he retires, you have to go full-time or a health district. So whichever way we go, it's gonna cost a significant more amount of money.
And then just as a side note, going back to the last COG meeting, they are trying to offer some kind of a grant application for us to district, not just us Brookfield, but for municipalities to look that way. But again, to your point, Steve, about them growing too fast, too big, you know, it's trying to figure out the financing of all these districts. It's just a lot of municipalities. Reading most recently has opted to try to find their own director
Yeah.
instead of districting. So all I know is right now, we need a backfill for Doc, and I would like for that person to be a full-time health director. You know, you just,
I don't think you have a
you
choice.
need it. But I do want you guys to look at the numbers with me next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, the Brownfield Grant, we had a presentation on this a couple of meetings ago, and they finally announced it. I wasn't willing to talk about it at all because we hadn't seen the language that the grant comprised of, and then on the 20th of July, they finally published it. I don't know if you gentlemen have had a chance to read through it, but it's part of the packet. I think it's,
Yeah,
I want to
read
say
it.
58 pages long. I don't remember how many pages it is, but this one's interesting. I want to take it to RFP so that we find the best partner for any site in Brookfield that may fit the bill for the language of the grant. DEEP has a list of about 100, 100, Greg?
Qualified, yeah.
152 on the list, but those aren't all brownfield. They're just locations that have had contamination issues.
So, the beauty of this application is that it's gonna be no cost to the town to apply. You know, I'm not looking for a motion, this is more of just an informative kind of,
I would
wanna go out
agree
to
with you, go out
RFP
to
on this.
RFP. We did that when we hired our last consultant for 20 Station Road. We got 3 or 4 really good responses, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Mr. Tembowski? So I would go to RFP and just see what's out there, see what's available. These require incredible amounts of support.
Yeah.
You know, the supporting documentation that you have to do is, the report we got last time was literally this thick with reams of data. So, yeah, I would agree with you on that, go to RFP.
Yeah, so purchasing department will be drafting the RFP, and we'll put it out there to find or see if there's any best fit for this program to partner with us. Any questions on that?
No, thank you.
All right. Our coveted steep grant at the Brookfield Market Sewer Project, which first came to my attention through ARPA proposal. I think the initial ask was somewhere in the ballpark of $600,000, and that was denied at the Board of Finance. So this is our opportunity for $500,000 funded by the state, and we ultimately would have to somehow come up with a 20% match. For tonight's purposes, it's not to address the money so much as to take the application to carry it forward and actually apply for potentially being funded for the grant.
Yeah, I read the application. A lot of times these grants request, one of their questions is, has the town approved their share
That's what I was talking about.
legally?
That was my-
And if they have, they look much more favorably upon it. You can see at Westcott, there are grants that were granted to towns 10 years ago, but they never got the town match. So those grants are still sitting there 10 years later. But I didn't read anything in here that said that you had to answer that question.
It's not in
But,
there.
then, again, for financial discussions, I have a lot of concerns. These numbers have gone all over the place with the WPCA. So when we get to that point, I'd like to have a much more definitive conversation. Where does the funding come from? How does it work? Who's doing what to whom, right? Because there are a lot of moving parts here.
But that will not affect us being able
No.
to go forward with
No, I think
applying
we.
for the grant.
Yeah, I mean, you can use steep grants to apply for a lot of things, but I think that this is a very equitable and good use for a steep grant.
I agree 100%. So I'm going to suggest a motion, and I've slightly revised it from what's recommended on the agenda for this evening. The motion is that the Board of Selectmen approve the submission of the application for the 2022 steep grant funding for the Brookfield Market Area Sewer System to address the public health and safety issue of the failing septic systems in the area of the Brookfield Market Craft Center, and authorize First Selectwoman Tara Carr to sign the grant application and any other documents associated with administering the grant if awarded, including any amendments thereto.
I'll second that for discussion purposes. I have one thing. I think when we do this, and this is up to you, informing the boards, like the Board of Finance, what we're doing, so they're aware of it ahead of time. You're not just dropping it on them. Okay, we got this grant, now we need 241,000. It's usually
So-
better if they're aware of what you're doing and what you're trying to do ahead of time, so when you do go for that approval for the town match or wherever the money's coming from, it flows more smoothly.
So they're
Just a
aware of
suggestion.
this.
Okay.
The WPCA briefed them on it at their last Board of Finance meeting.
Okay.
And also when we meet to discuss all of our finances, the best route to any kind of a town contribution towards a match will be discussed. I
Yeah.
have some ideas already that I've been talking to Marsh about. So there's a
Oh, yeah. Having said that, I'm,
huge plate of options.
yeah, having said that, I'm fine with applying for this grant.
All right,
It's something that does need to be done. I think we all supported it
Yeah.
for the ARPA funding.
we did.
And we're surprised that the Board of Finance turned it down.
There's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It's always a lot of money.
But this, I mean, this is looking a gift horse in the mouth. If we can get to that $500,000, we're gonna fix a huge problem that's been decades in the coming.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that we're clear that this is not appropriating money, it's not doing anything with any money, we're simply going forward with the grant.
We're gonna
Yeah,
apply.
Right, right.
Yeah, no
Right,
obligation
going-
on the part of
right,
the town,
right.
no costs on the part of the town except the time and it
Right.
takes to fill it out.
I just want to make sure that people know that.
Any further discussion on the steep grant for the Brookfield Market Area Sewer Project?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Consent agenda. I'd like to make a motion to add the Historic Document Preservation Grant for $5,500 to keep up with their records.
Yep.
And the only thing here, it requires my signature.
Yep.
So that was added as part of your packet.
So Ginny will put a description in the final minutes. We added an item
Yep.
to approve a grant for the town clerk's office in the amount of $5,000.
5,500.
5,000, oh, it went up, 5,500 for record preservation. Okay.
Just have a motion to add that to the agenda if
Yeah.
it hasn't, and then you can vote on it.
Oh, I'll make that motion as I just said it.
I'll second. Oh,
Harry.
Second to add to the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I amend that to consent agenda.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'd like to make a motion that the selectmen approve items. She has this labeled as 8 alpha. Well, all right, 7 alpha through delta on the consent agenda with the addition of the Historic Document Preservation Grant.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the consent agenda?
I have none.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. I wish Jay was still here. The Still River Greenway appointments. We've got Jay Ennis, Boden Dakow, James Steesman, Maureen Farrell, and Jean Hartnett.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion that the selectmen reappoint the following, the members just mentioned of the to the Still River Greenway Committee for the term of today, August 1st, 2022, for a year through August 1st, 2023.
I'll second.
Discussion?
None.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Harry?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I thought I already said yeah.
And the Commission on Aging. Betsy McIlvain touched on this during public comment, and I'm fully on board. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Elaine Tomanio from alternate to regular member for a term of today, 8/1/2022 through February 5th, 2024, as recommended by the DTC.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that appointment?
None.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And 3.
Okay. Can I get a motion to add the appointment of Linda Arment to the zoning board as an alternate? Or,
I'm going to make a motion to appoint Gwen Arnett to, which board should I?
zoning commission?
Oh, the zoning commission.
We should do a motion to add it, and then we can do a motion to vote on it.
Made it to add it.
I'll second the motion to add. Any discussion? This was my oversight. We received this request while Ginny was out for 2 weeks, and it was my oversight, so it was added at the last minute today.
This was an open position, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Any further discussion?
None.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we enter into executive session for discussion regarding school security.
May I make a motion that we take 5 minutes to use
I
the
will
facilities?
second that. Thank you.
All
Maybe
those in
we should,
favor?
Aye.
back.
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right,
Okay,
you're back on.
I'd like to make a motion to resume our regular session after our pause.
I second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'd like to make a motion now to invite Chief Puglisi, Dr. Burrill, Harry Shaker, Steve Dunn, and Dennis Kokinos into executive session with Ginny Giovanelli as our recording secretary.
And you're gonna have somebody on phone?
I'm sorry, and
Okay.
call the chairman of the Board of Ed, Bob Belden, on the landline.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion?
Oh, you have to put what's the purposes.
Oh, right, for the purpose of school security for Brookfield Public Schools.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we wait for Harry.
And now you shut off.
unmuted and ready to go.
Yep.
All right. So I'd like to make a motion that we come out of executive session into regular session.
Second.
And any discussion on it? Well, I do want to add that we were in executive session for an hour and a half, Ginny? Yeah, and we had some
Yep.
really great,
Wait a minute, you didn't vote
what was
Gotta
this, the
finish the vote.
discussion? Oh,
to come out of executive session. You made the motion, I seconded it,
and
now
this
you
is the
want to get a
discussion
vote
of the
to come out.
executive session.
Aye.
Aye,
All in favor then?
say aye, okay, now we're in regular session.
Okay.
So, back to what I was saying, we were in executive session for an hour and a half, and we had some really great in-depth conversation about layered approach to school security. We will not be making any decisions tonight, and we're gonna reconvene on our conversation early next week. Anybody have anything else to add to that? No? Can I get a
It was,
motion?
oh, I'm
Go
sorry. It
ahead.
was just very detailed and very informative. There was a lot of information, on safety and programs, so.
Anyone wanna make a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night. Thank